Rasfax here. Today we're going to do a quick look, first impressions of the primary arms, SLX 1 to 6X. Why am I doing a first impressions when I generally just engage in reviews? Well, honestly, looking back at the Strybog and the LCAN review and their preview or their first impressions, I found it was quite useful because it kind of showed what my initial thoughts were, what I thought were problems, what I thought was good, and then I did the review and it's a good comparison point, right? Also, the views are nice, I guess. Okay, so the primary arms. Big spoiler of what this review is probably going to be like or focused around is, can the primary arms hold its own at $300? Or is it more cost-effective, more value to save up and buy a $500, $600 LPVO, like the PX4i or the Vortex PST Gen II? Both of those are also in the higher budget range, but offer excellent value, right? So is the primary arm sacrificing a lot of its value to come in at a cheaper price point, and thus you actually get less optic even though you're paying less versus one of those nicer ones, right? So that'll be a lot of my objective with this one, because there are shortfalls of spending $300 instead of more on an LPVO. So we'll get into that. All right, let's get into it. What were my first impressions? I guess starting off, I put in a new battery, turned on the Illumination. Yeah, Illumination sucks. There's no way around it. Is it better than a Strike Eagle? Yeah, probably, but both of them are just borderline unusable. You can turn this on and notice it during the day, but it's what I would call daylight visible. The reticle turns red, but that's about it. A big plus of a illuminated reticle and something like the PX4i, which I just reviewed, is that it gets bright enough that you can treat it like a red dot. Your eye just instantly blips over to it, and you don't need stadia lines essentially to get your eye there. Here, it just turns the reticle red. There's no red dot effect. Yeah, it's not good illumination. And I left it on all range session, which was about 4 to 5 hours, and by the end of it, the battery was already dimming enough that the brightness level was dropping. So, I'm not a big fan of the illumination. But that transitions greatly into my next point. The reticle. The reticle is really good. For something like PX4i, it's meant to be built as a minimalist reticle, such that on the 1X you can rely on the illumination. This is kind of the opposite, and it's good that they designed it this way. The etched reticle is actually very functional without illumination. I still think an illuminated reticle that is very simple but very red dot-like is better, but this is the next best thing, and we're coming in at a budget price point. So I was a big fan of the ACSS reticle. I mean, everyone is. Trijicon is copying it in their ACOGs, or licensed copying it, from what I understand. But yeah, big donut and a chevron. Chevron gives you a fine aiming point, and that donut gets your eyes to the center of the thing. You don't need any stadia lines or whatever. Reticle, excellent. I had a couple mess ups where I used the top of the chevron instead of the top of the horseshoe instead of the chevron, but that's just training. That's on me. So excellent reticle. We'll see how she does it ranged. Next big thing I noticed, 1X, actually not terrible. These optics have come a long way since I tried these back in like 2013 or whatever, where the budget ones, glass at 1X and the eye box at 1X is noticeably shit, for the lack of a better term. You do notice on this, however, while the 1X is fine, I guess, when you crank up to 6X or even 4X when I was comparing it, the glass quality does take a noticeable hit. It's like somebody took honey and smeared it on the entire lens. There's just a higher level of distortion throughout. There's no way around it. Obviously, it's a budget price point, but I noticed when looking at when doing long range, when I was using this on my friend's rifle, you're having a little bit of issue resolving very small objects at distance, and we were shooting small objects, 4-inch steel plates at 350 yards. You do start to notice an issue. One plus thing that I was pleasantly surprised about, because I actually did own a primary arms, one of their Gen 1s back in the day. When you go from 1X, you have it focused, and go to 6X, you don't have to adjust the focus ring. That was a thing that you had to do with the old primary arms. The 1X and the 6X did not have the same focus. On that note, on 6X, your eye box drastically shrinks, but it's still in the same spot at least. So if you're properly scoped in at 1x, you go to 6x, you're good. So I was pleasantly surprised by that as well. And really, that's about it for my first impressions. I think this is really going to come down to how does the reticle do at 1x, which I think so far is good. How does the glass hinder me at 6x? And would primary arms have been better cutting the 6x to go down to 4x and then using better glass like a lot of the others? I don't know. Can you do that on a $300 optic? I'm not sure. But yeah, will the glass hinder me at range, or is it usable enough that it justifies its price tag? And then finally, durability, obviously. I'm going to be doing a slightly shorter review. Unfortunately, ammo is expensive as hell right now. It's brutal, man. I mean, all of you guys obviously know this. So I'm probably going to do about 600, 700 rounds, plus about 1,000 to 2,000 22. And the 22 is just to get used to it. Like, how does it feel? Get really comfortable with it. And then switch to 5.56 and and then do the actual testing, right? So not ideal. Obviously, I'd like to do my 1,400 rounds that I generally do for reviews, but that's just not possible nowadays. Hopefully, we can go back to it after this, but we'll see. Okay. That's been some brass facts for you. Quick first impressions on the primary arms. My thoughts on how it felt right out of the gate. Yeah. See you guys around.